Welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
And this is the podcast where every week we review a classic pro wrestling TV show from a streaming service.
Yes, and that classic pro wrestling TV show can be from any streaming service that we can find all around the world, from any promotion that we can find from all around the world, and dump into the randomizer with the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of hours of pro wrestling TV that are already there. The randomizer mixes everything up, picks out a show, and that's what we watch. And on this week's podcast, it's I guess I would say one of the more relatively recent shows, which I guess just means that we're old, that we think 2007 is recent. But have no fear. This is not an episode of WWE ECW or Wild and Young era NXT. It is, for better or worse, an episode of the flagship program of WWE.
That's right. WWE Monday Night Raw from April 23rd, 2007. Now, we have all of those titles in the randomizer. We fire it up. So, of course, it's going to hit, there's how many decades of Raw at this point, right?
Yeah.
So it was bound to get us a repeat. So we hit Raw earlier this season, and so this is our second episode of Raw here in season 2. So if you go back to that episode of Raw we covered earlier, we went through the entire lineage, the history of the television show Monday Night Raw, how it got to be. We talk about primetime wrestling and all the forerunners. Go back to that episode to get the history, the context of the show, the WWE Monday Night Raw. And
even go back, by the way, to one of the earlier episodes in this season, Primetime Wrestling.
There you go.
To hear all about the history of the predecessor to Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, so there's those episodes are waiting patiently for you in the back catalog. If you have never listened to them before and you're like, well, that's so old. It's not old. It's new to you.
The moment has not passed.
This is
still very much there.
Evergreen content. That's the beauty of the entire back catalog of this podcast. It is waiting there patiently for you. It's a brand new episode for you. Go and check it out. So for this one, we're going to take you to 2007. This is April 23rd, so we are 3 weeks after WrestleMania 23, which took place in Detroit, Michigan. I was there, Adam. I was at WrestleMania 23.
So this was part of your run of whatever it was, 4 or 5 years in a row of going to Mania?
I went to WrestleMania from WrestleMania 18 in Toronto all the way through to 23 in Detroit, and this was my last WrestleMania in person, yes. So I was at this show. This show was main evented by Bobby Lashley representing Donald Trump, defeating Umaga, who was representing Vince McMahon in a hair versus hair match, which resulted in Vince getting his head shaved. This set huge pay-per-view buy rates, and also on that show, The Undertaker defeated Batista in a match that was so awesome at the time. I had no expectations for Undertaker versus Batista, and this was where The Undertaker's streak was really hitting its stride, and people got into, Batista could win this match and end the Undertaker streak. And it was a thing, and it added such a extra dimension to that match, and it was a good match. The Undertaker working hard at WrestleMania, and it was a surprisingly awesome match, and probably my favorite match live at that WrestleMania.
So the streak was bigger at 2007 for WrestleMania with Undertaker versus Batista than it was for Undertaker versus, was it Test and Albert?
It was Nathan Jones. Nathan.
Nathan Jones wasn't in the match.
No, it was Undertaker and Nathan Jones against the Big Show and A-Train, right?
Oh, God, that's right. Yeah, even worse. So the streak there, I would imagine there wasn't the same amount of tension and drama just filtering its way throughout the stadium that night.
No, there was more tension and drama when Limp Bizkit was performing than there was for the Undertaker streak at
WWE's favorite band.
Yeah, go
Limp
back
Bizkit.
and listen to WrestleMania 19, our coverage of that. We reviewed, that's a 2-part episode back in season 1. Go back and listen to that one to hear us talk all about that. But this was a way different environment for The Undertaker. It was a way different environment for the actual closing main event of the show was John Cena defending the WWE title against Shawn Michaels. And I was a big, and still am a big Shawn Michaels fan, so I was rooting hard for Shawn Michaels to beat John Cena, knowing deep down that John Cena was going to walk out still as champion. But so that was a totally fine match as well. But again, we were all coming down off that Undertaker match and the craziness that was the Lashley Umaga Trump McMahon craziness. This show for the Raw that we're watching here, so 3 weeks after that event, is the go-home show for the Backlash pay-per-view, which would take place 6 days after this Raw show airs.
For your, by the way, for the new wrestling fans, back then it was just called Backlash. It was not called WrestleMania Backlash.
No. And Raw this week was from London, England.
Which is another weird quirk of the randomizer on this season of the podcast. We had that SmackDown episode with an all-timer of a performance by Eddie Guerrero. That was
a
London.
London one too. That's right.
Yeah.
Wow.
A London show with an largely unknown local wrestler coming out and challenging an established star. So put that in your back pocket as we head into the beginning of the show.
The show opens with Shane McMahon coming out, and we see a clip from the prior week where Umaga is there with Vince, and Vince, because his head is shaved, is wearing a fedora hat in this clip, looks completely ridiculous, and I was laughing hysterically on my couch. He's
like an elderly bodybuilding gangster from the 20s is the best way I can describe this look. And there's an even better look coming up from him momentarily, but the thing I like most about this, particularly if we're talking about a fashion corner sort of report, is that as Shane McMahon comes out, his music hits, here comes the money, and here comes Shane. Jerry the King Lawler, our color commentator for the evening, says that Shane is, quote, dressed for competition. And he is dressed like a trash bag with arms.
Yes, he's dressed how I imagine him dressed at all times.
Yes, exactly. He's dressed the only way Shane McMahon can dress. He's more dressed like he's about to go into the sauna to try to cut weight than he is to compete.
So they're showing these clips from last week's episode. The episode was airing from Italy, and Vince issues an open challenge for someone in some Italian fella in the crowd to come out to face Umaga for the Intercontinental title. Vince picks a random person from the crowd. They come in, they introduce themselves as Santino Marella.
Yeah, my Raw watching was pretty limited back then. I had completely forgotten that his character started as a fan in the crowd getting pulled out. I was not expecting that.
Santino shows that he's got some fight in him. He gets a near fall with a roll-up, so Vince immediately makes it a no-holds-barred, no disqualification match. Umaga destroys Santino until Lashley attacks Umaga. Lashley nails Umaga with a chair and a spear. And
kills him with a chair. This was a 2007 unprotected chair shot to the top of the head.
And Santino gets the pin and wins the Intercontinental title as a fan in his debut.
And a terrible Intercontinental title belt, by the way. Not a fan
horrible.
Of the 2007 vintage. It looks like a generic version of the European title here.
It's a small oval title belt, and yeah, it's not great. So if you aren't aware about Santino, a funny story. Santino was, when he was in the WWE Developmental Territory, OVW, Ohio Valley Wrestling, He was involved in the incident that got Jim Cornette fired from OVW.
Is this the Jim Cornette Brock Lesnar incident?
No.
Or is this something else?
No, this is different. Santino was told to sit in the crowd and pretend to be a fan. This was before his TV debut.
So he was
OVW.
by the
time well versed
he was a
in
pro.
This. Yeah.
This is what he does. Apparently, he plays a fan.
He was told to act terrified when the Boogeyman came out.
Oh God.
The Boogeyman, who everyone in OVW thought was really crazy, he went into business for himself, found some antlers backstage, and wore them out to the ring. Santino ended up laughing his ass off at the sight of the Boogeyman wearing these antlers. Now, even though he was far from the only one, as tons of other people in the crowd were laughing, Cornette was incensed. He flew off the handle. He'd been under a lot of stress for months, and this was the straw that broke the camel's back for him. He went nuts, slapped Santino repeatedly backstage.
Wow.
He immediately called the office, told him about the incident, and Cornette was fired. Paul Heyman would then replace Cornette in OVW. So a little Santino backstory for you. Shane, in the ring live now, says someone from the crowd tonight will face Shane McMahon in a no disqualification match just like last week.
The best thing is nobody in the crowd is scared. First, he says, somebody will face me, and everybody's raising their hands. Men, women, children, everybody wants to fight Shane McMahon. And not even from like a hatred standpoint, just I can take that guy sort of vibe. He then makes it, as you said, a no DQ match. It dissuades nobody from wanting to fight him. My favorite part is that he tells a guy with a CZW sign in the front row that man would not last 4 seconds with Shane McMahon.
He spots Jose Mourinho at ringside. He's the manager of the Chelsea Football Club. Thunderous boos from the crowd for this man.
Less popular than Shane McMahon here this evening in London.
Shane can't find anyone in the crowd, so he found Great Britain's greatest wrestler. He allegedly defeated 6 men in a pub, and he calls out Liverpool's own Robbie Brookside.
I did not expect it to be Robbie Brookside, like a legit known wrestler, a guy that had done New Japan tours, a guy that had worked some WCW shots in the late 90s, if I'm not mistaken. The father of Zaya Brookside of NXT fame. Yeah, here comes Robbie Brookside.
Yeah, Robbie Brookside 6 years later in 2013 would be a talent scout for WWE, and he would become a coach and train in the WWE developmental territories, a job he still has at the time of this recording in 2021.
That must mean that we're about to discuss an incredible performance by Robbie Brookside that went on to impress all the hires up in the WWE, including Shane McMahon and Vince McMahon.
Robbie Brookside versus Shane McMahon, no disqualification. Shane starts out quickly, takes him down, then forearms, dropping an elbow to the lower back of Brookside.
Shane McMahon doing chain wrestling in a trash bag. Not great. The forearms were much better, but seeing him do like go behinds and takedowns, and Jim Ross saying Shane McMahon is extremely athletic, and he has a few athletic things that he can do, but just the visual presentation of Shane McMahon, it makes you unable to do anything but laugh when you hear Jim Ross say that.
Shane with punches in the corner, knocking Brookside down. Brookside seated now in the corner. Shane outside grabs a garbage can. Shane puts the can wedged between the ropes in front of Brookside's face. Shane then goes to the opposite side of the ring, stands on the top rope, leaps across the ring, kicking the can into Brookside's face. This is the Van Terminator, originally invented by Rob Van Dam and used, of course, then by Shane McMahon.
As
naturally.
the coast to coast, as he would call it. Shane McMahon stealing a Rob Van Dam move. Totally natural. So similar athletes and guys. But yes, this was super impressive to see him do, particularly given how big the WWE ring is compared to other rings like the ECW ring, for example. So yeah, that happens. And at this point, I'm like, okay, where are they going with this? Because that's really quick into this match / segment, which felt like it was going to be more of an extended beatdown. Instead, what happens is that Shane McMahon gets the mic. He lays in the corner next to the fallen Robbie Brookside and tells him, hey, Robbie, I forgot to tell you, but this is a 2-on-1 handicap match, and my partner is the Samoan bulldozer, Umaga. So here comes Umaga with your longtime close personal friend, Armando Estrada.
That's right.
By his side.
Yes, Armando Estrada, and he comes out with Umaga. Umaga beats down Brookside in the corner. I forgot how awesome Umaga was.
He was
so good.
He was incredible, and also just before this run in WWE as Umaga, he was incredible as Jamal in All Japan. He was a great foreign heel in the 2004, 2005, that sort of time period as part of the Voodoo Murders stable.
Yeah, Umaga.
Or is actually, Voodoo Murders, and also as part of RO&D, Roughly Obsess and Destroy, the stable of Taka Michinoku.
Umaga with an ass attack in the corner. He goes to the top, hits a huge splash. Shane gets the mic again. He says it's not a 2-on-1, it's a 3-on-1, and Shane calls out his father, Vince McMahon.
This is where I see for the second time on the video file on the streaming service what you had sent to me moments earlier via text, as here comes Vince McMahon looking more ridiculous than he's ever looked, wearing a derby hat along with his suit, doing what you said, and I confirm, is the most absurd Vince McMahon strut down to the ring. It's a caricature of a Vince McMahon caricature.
I was crying with laughter. That's why I had to text it to you. I had to text it to my friends who would appreciate this. I'm like, he comes out with this derby bowler hat on and just walks in the most hilarious fashion. I loved it. Vince McMahon being a cartoon version of Vince McMahon is never not hilarious. And I was crying with laughter. It was so good.
It was basically like a drunk bushwhacker doing an impersonation of a drunk Vince McMahon walking down into the ring.
In a ridiculous hat, which
yes.
I love this Vince and absurd hats gimmick. I can't get enough.
Wearing like a Charlie Chaplin hat, basically. It's just incredible visual. Also, Jim Ross, who we'll talk about a lot throughout the show. This was, I thought, one of the best jobs he's ever done on any WWE show I've watched. Good. So good at, he was kind of both WWE Vince McMahon, and during the one match that we'll spend a lot of time talking about on this show, very WCW Jim Ross. But here he has a great line calling Vince McMahon, quote, Satan's role model.
Vince gets in the ring. He covers Brookside. He hooks the leg, like aggressively hooking the leg, hooking his hands together.
He shoots the half, hooks the leg, like this is a world title match that he's 55 minutes into, and gets the pin on Robbie Brookside.
Yeah, hooking this leg and holding it with like the intensity of like this guy's gonna kick out even though he's completely dead. This was great, hilarious finish and a fun opening segment.
And then they just throw in randomly, just very, very casually, that, oh yeah, tomorrow night on ECW, it's Umaga versus Bobby Lashley.
You know, the main event of WrestleMania 3 weeks earlier. Yeah, that's going to be on ECW television.
And it was like a 5-second graphic with a mention that long, and it was never talked about again the rest of the show.
No, because they know that we know that match is not happening.
Pretty much. And then we learn immediately after that we are getting a WrestleMania rematch here tonight. Not Bobby Lashley versus Umaga, but instead here on Raw, it is Shawn Michaels versus John Cena in a rematch, non-title, but a big singles match. We get an incredible video package recapping the WrestleMania 23 match. And this is where I note something that is in my mind quite often, that I wish that WWE, rather than being its own wrestling company, was just a production studio that made video packages and hype videos for every other wrestling company. Because for as many things as I have not liked through the years about the WWF/WWE, no one has ever come remotely close to them in terms of producing recap and hype videos.
100% agree. I still think the greatest thing they ever did were those old Desire packages.
Yes.
Those were just absolutely incredible. Just so they are the kings of the video package, and
still are to this day. Even as non-satisfying as the modern product is, they can still put together a video package like nobody's business.
Yeah, and this was a great recap, but I felt it was a weird music choice. It sounded just like an acoustic guitar with like classical style picking, and I'm like, okay, usually it's like something more epic or, something more hard
It was more
rock.
Understated.
This was a very unique music choice.
It was classy, and I think they were trying to impart the classic nature of the match. I don't know. I didn't mind it. It definitely was different, though. It was not your normal WWE's favorite band, Limp Bizkit, doing a hype video with Undertaker and Kane or something. This was not that.
So tonight we get a WrestleMania rematch, like you mentioned, Cena versus Michaels. This will rule if we actually get that match, but that's always the risk with a WWE main event, is that they're building to a four-way at Backlash with Randy Orton, Edge, Cena, and Michaels. So if we get this match, great, but we'll see how it goes. I'm expecting a run-in at this point in the show, and a schmaz to with 1, 2, or 3 of those guys holding the title at the end to build to the pay-per-view coming up.
Yeah, that is always a safe bet when it comes to an episode of Raw, and particularly a go-home show. What we do get next, though, is WWE Rewind by Just for Men.
Yeah, we see clips of Lance Cade beating Jeff Hardy last week. The tag team champions are the Hardy Boys as they come out. Matt Hardy is about to be in action here. His opponent is Lance Cade's partner, Trevor Murdoch, who's accompanied by Lance Cade.
We are informed that the Hardys beat John Cena and Shawn Michaels to win the tag team titles, which I have no recollection of. I guess it's not surprising because that was and always will be a WWE trope of having the feuding singles wrestlers win the tag titles and then have dissension, drop them, and then go on to have their big match. The thing that's most noteworthy about this match, though, is this is the point where I realize that the ring announcer here for the WWE in London, England, is Todd Grisham, and he is horrendous. It's as if
so bad.
There's no clarity to his voice. He sounds muffled, and everything he says, it's at like 3/4 speed. It is unconscionably terrible. No. I apologize to everybody who's ever done ring announcing on a show that we have reviewed, including whoever that horrible ring announcer was in that show. On what?
That AWA show from the 70s.
Well, the AWA show from the 70s, that ring announcer was amazing, and I'll hear no slander of him. I'm talking about that horrible ring announcer for that Moxley, or that Dean Ambrose, I should say, Seth Rollins match, right? That we reviewed over on the Patreon/Apple Podcast bonus content feed. I've never heard a worse ring announcer here than Todd Grisham. He's a terrible, what can he do? He's a horrendous play-by-play guy / color commentator. We've already covered that in a lot of detail here on this podcast in previous episodes. And he, as a ring announcer, is even worse than he is as a play-by-play or color commentator.
Which was worse, his banter with Josh at the commentary desk from the Wild and Young NXT, or his ring announcing, which is
his ring announcing. It just the most low energy, muffled, slow. It's just brutal. But anyway, yeah, that countered the fact of how excited I was to hear Matt Hardy here as a member of the Hardy Boys come out to his V1 music, his "I Can Slam a Tornado" theme song.
Good stuff. And he's got His opponent's Trevor Murdoch, and he bears quite the striking resemblance to Dick Murdoch. We've seen a lot of Dick Murdoch in this podcast over the years, and seeing Trevor Murdoch, they are not related at all, but he takes the name because he bears the resemblance to him, and it's uncanny sometimes. It's very impressive.
It's funny because it reminds you so much of Arn Anderson not being related to Ole or Gene Anderson, but Arn being teamed with Ole, and you would never think they weren't family.
Matt Hardy on the attack early, goes to the middle turnbuckle, but Murdoch cuts him off by just pulling his legs out from under him, so Hardy crashes into the ring back first. Murdoch goes to work, tries to use his wrist tape to choke Hardy, but good officiating. The ref takes it away before he can actually use it, and Jim Ross always appreciates some good officiating with a tip of the cap.
Yeah, I noted that. I think that beyond everything else we see on this show, and there's some great stuff later, I think that was the high point for Jim Ross on this show.
Sleeper by Murdoch, and Hardy fights out, but Murdoch cuts him off with an elbow. He misses an awkward elbow drop off the middle rope.
You are being kind by calling that an awkward elbow drop. That was the Russ Francis splash of elbow drops, or the Stevie Ray first rope leg drop of elbow drops.
Yeah, Murdoch should not be coming off the middle turnbuckle. He should retire this move immediately. Yeah.
Well, yeah, there are several moves, and again, I'm a big Trevor Murdoch fan, but you thought that was a move that he needed to strike from his repertoire. Oh boy, we'll get toward the finish, and yeah.
Matt on the comeback, clothesline in the corner, Bulldog, got a 2 count, hits the side effect, gets another 2 count. Hardy then drops a leg off the second turnbuckle. Lance Cade gets on the apron. He gets knocked off by Matt Hardy, but Murdoch, from behind, rams Hardy shoulder first into the post. And then Trevor Murdoch grabs Matt Hardy and goes for a Canadian destroyer?
No, a code red. He goes for a code red. And on the in the pantheon of Southern wrestlers trying code reds, he is no Dustin Rhodes. I will tell you that. So he goes for this code red, and somehow Matt Hardy just lands on top of him as Trevor Murdoch takes a flat back bump, and this somehow hurt Matt Hardy, leading to the pin.
Yes. Now you say it's a code red. I think he was actually going for a destroyer here. You guys be the judge, because it's hard to tell what he was trying here. It was horrible. It went completely wrong.
I will actually try to find, if I can't find, I'll try to make a GIF of this and post this as a poll on the podcast, or on our Twitter account at Wrestle at Random. Yeah, is this a code red? Is this a Canadian destroyer, or, as all good polls have, option C, La Parka?
There you go. And so yeah, this was Trevor Murdoch in 2007 trying to pull out something wacky. Did not work.
Well, he pulled out something wacky. The thing I noted immediately is that no matter how bad that top rope elbow drop was, or no matter how egregious this, I'm trying to figure out a flying body attack type description of this finisher. No matter how bad that was, it was miles better than the Dup Cup that he was involved in.
100%. Yeah.
In that TNA Weekly pay-per-view episode.
No, I'll never get that time back in my life that I spent watching.
When I am on my deathbed, I will look around, hopefully see loved ones near. And as the last breaths are leaving my body, I'll think, what would I do right now with those 18 minutes that I lost back in 2020 watching that?
Oh, the Dub Cup. No, this was not that bad, but still, if you gave me 10,000 guesses on what the finish of this match was going to be, I would have never gotten to Trevor Murdoch trying whatever that move was.
No.
We get a graphic that Randy Orton will take on Edge later tonight, so 2007 Raw is equal to the 2021 Raw, as the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Will this be the greatest match ever, is what I'm wondering. That's yet to be determined. Then here comes the Eminem music. Here comes Melina. And this is where I noted that Todd Grisham is the worst ring announcer ever. Him saying, Melina.
Melina
It was just
Perez,
horrendous.
the WWE Women's Champion. She comes out, has the full Eminem entrance, red
Yes,
carpet,
the paparazzi, the whole thing.
Her opponent, Maria Kanellis. And she comes out, Melina beats her up early.
This match is hilarious. She comes out, Jim Ross is screaming about how Maria is rapidly improving. She hits a nice flying head scissors.
Yep.
Hits a flying clothesline of sorts. She then runs at Melina again. They both grab each other's hair, spin around the ring like a helicopter. They each smash headfirst into the mat. Somehow Melina is not affected by this at all. Maria is dead, and Melina pins Maria in 45 seconds.
Yes.
Okay.
This is a very quick nothing match.
That's the whole match.
That's it. Carlito's in the back with Ric Flair. I had forgotten that these two were hanging out.
Yeah, so I had forgotten that they actually were ever together. I remember that incredible Ric Flair promo calling out Carlito for being lazy and not having any motivation, just because it was something that it felt like a UFO landing on the front lawn of the White House compared to everything else on an episode of Monday Night Raw. But I guess after that, they became a duo. Ric Flair was managing Carlito.
As soon as I saw this, I immediately then, because I'm like, oh my God, I have no memory of this. And then I got a memory of it. And I'm like, oh yeah, they were in the pre-show. Ric Flair was in the pre-show of that WrestleMania 23 with Carlito.
Promotional malpractice.
Unacceptable. The Great Khali is in the ring. His opponent is Carlito. What is this match?
Let's go back to that backstage promo. It's so weird. It's very short. Flair goes up to Carlito in the locker room and says, "Let's go." And Carlito says, "Tonight it's not let's." That's it. That's the end of the backstage promo. We go to the ring where the Great Khali is just standing there. He does not get an entrance. He is Zan Panzer here on this program. No entrance. And then here comes Carlito, not Caribbean cool, just Carlito. I was having flashbacks to the Carlitos. Show? Yeah, the cabana, which opened with Carlito and Kurt Angle coming out, and then a local jobber getting squashed by Kurt Angle. Instead, as we said, it is Carlito versus the Great Khali next on Raw. Fashion Corner. Carlito has the most generic OVW bicycle shorts gear you've ever seen, with one glaring exception. There are letters on his gear that make up words. The words that the letters make up are eat, spit.
Shocking, this catchphrase never caught on. Eat, spit. How lame.
It sounds like a horrible chant that ECW fans would yell at female valets.
So lame. And Carlito starts out by running into Khali. That doesn't work. Kicks to the legs. Can't take Khali down. Khali puts him on his shoulders, but Carlito eye rakes his way free. He tries a drop kick off the top rope, but Khali just swats him away in midair, nearly killing him.
This was the Trevor Murdoch code red of top rope drop kicks here. We talk about men who should never do moves. This should be banned. Carlito should never be allowed to do a top rope drop kick again. It was hard to figure out what it was on first watch.
A chop to the head by Khali, tree slam, foot on the chest, and the Great Khali wins. Ric Flair comes out to tend to Carlito, but Carlito just yells at Flair. He
yells, "Where were you?" Which is great because he told Flair basically, "I don't want you to come out here." And then he gets squashed by the Great Khali. And then he's yelling at Ric Flair, "Where were you? I thought we were a team." And then Flair just backs off, not impressed. Gives Carlito a slight smirk and just leaves.
Yeah, Carlito's yelling at him in Spanish, and Flair gets that hurt feelings Flair look on his face, and then just turns around, walks up the ramp backward, has a smirk on his face, and Great use of Ric Flair.
Well, yeah, to recap, they flew Ric Flair to London, England. He was in a 5-second backstage promo where he said, "Let's go." And then he came out after the match and was out for about 30 seconds, said nothing, got yelled at, looked sad, and went to the back.
Mick Foley's in the back. Edge meets up with him. They talk about Backlash. They talk about the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Edge says that he's going to win his third WWE title, but tonight he will beat Orton, and then he's going to kick back and watch Cena and Michaels tear each other apart.
We also see before this a video promo leading to Backlash where we are told that it will be the team of Umaga, Vince McMahon, and Shane McMahon taking on Bobby Lashley for the ECW World title. And ostensibly, I don't know if it's like Vince gets the main plate of the belt, then Shane and Umaga each get a side plate, or is this how Vince won the ECW World title? So it's just the three of them are competing as Vince, like Shane and Umaga are Vince avatars in this match. We don't get an explanation. I don't necessarily want one, but it was just, yikes.
Non-title match, Shawn Michaels versus WWE Champion John Cena.
And to set the stage here, we are 1 hour into this 2-hour episode of Raw. We have 2 matches left remaining on the format. Shawn Michaels versus John Cena and Randy Orton versus Edge. That's where we're at.
And they are the 4 men who will be in the main event for the title at the Backlash show 6 days from now. Mixed reaction. Lots of guys booing Cena, kids, women, some dudes cheering. Shawn Michaels, he's popular. So it's pretty much like a babyface match.
Yes. Well, and it's also interesting too, because as we'll get into it, Shawn Michaels, it's a babyface match, but he's wrestling with more of an edge than I remember for really any of his post-back injury comeback. The other note that I wanted to make from a presentation standpoint, because if you're listening in linear fashion, the last episode that you heard was us talking about WCW Monday Nitro. And in that episode, we talked about, you brought it up, Jeremy, how much you can't stand some of the issues with the volume level on wrestler entrances. And I talked about how much I hate in WCW how they would run basically one theme song right into the other. A wrestler would come out, his music would play, there would be no pause, no silence. It would just go straight into the next guy's music. Here, Shawn Michaels, looking ridiculous coming out as an older man with his sexy boy toy song. That always cracks me up. But he gets into the ring, his music stops, and we get a good 10 seconds of no music.
It's a long pause, yeah.
And what that does, though, the anticipation that builds in the crowd before the iconic John Cena theme song hits, it's perfect. That's what you do.
It is perfect. It is, absolutely. It builds the tension, and then there's a release when that song hits.
Yes.
And no, it's the opposite of WCW. It couldn't be more of a bookend to the other side of what WCW was doing. Grappling early, stalemate. Cena with a takedown, tries for the STFU, his version of the STF, but Michaels scrambles to get the ropes, like panicky.
Well, yeah, because that's how he lost at WrestleMania. He knows that's his, in his mind, the one way that he can lose here. And that's the theme to the beginning of this match. A lot of mat wrestling, holds, reversals. I noted immediately, this is not normal WWE style. The crowd doesn't know how to react right away, but I'm loving it. Like this feels more like the beginning stages of a Flair Steamboat match than it does your normal WWE, WWF main event. Jim Ross totally in his element here. He's WCW Jim Ross calling this, but yeah, the early stages are several similar sequences that all end with different positions of John Cena going for the STFU and Michaels getting the ropes, and in a very Ric Flair way, getting more and more frustrated and bewildered each time that happens.
That's right. The first time he holds up his finger saying, I was that close. And
Cena does.
Yes, Cena does.
Cena appears supremely confident at the beginning of this match, and Shawn Michaels is very concerned, and there's a lot of trepidation, which is great when you look at, as you mentioned earlier, how their match at WrestleMania played out.
They start yelling at each other. Michaels then with a slap to Cena, and Cena answers back with a right hand. We go to commercial. After commercial, Cena with Michaels in a headlock, and Jim Ross does a great job here pointing out that Michaels put Cena in the head scissors and Cena escaped. Michaels put Cena in a headlock and Cena escaped using the head scissors. But Cena has the headlock on here, and Michaels tried to do the same head scissors, but he can't get out.
Yes. Yeah, the wrestlers are telling the story, and Jim Ross is accentuating the story that Shawn Michaels is going to have to use his speed, his ring smarts, all of his cunning and wile, whereas, John Cena can rely on his power. Jim Ross right at this point is another tremendous thing where Cena, coming out of this reverse chinlock, Cena hits a hard shoulder block. And I just thought Ross was incredible talking about how Michaels' head bounced off the mat. He might have a concussion, and saying how, I don't think John Cena realizes just how badly hurt Shawn Michaels might be here in the early stages of the match.
Yeah, and then after that shoulder block, right back to the headlock, and Michaels selling the headlock struggle is a master class. His hands reaching, trying to pry his way out, trying to push him off, all these little things, great stuff, and you know how much we love the little things here on the podcast.
Yeah, this match, and we'll get to it as it goes through, but this is a tour de force from Shawn Michaels, and there's a few moments in this match, I'll touch on it later, where you can make a comparison of Shawn Michaels to another legend in the past that I had never remotely equated stylistically these two wrestlers together, but I saw it here, so something to note.
Michaels goes for a hip toss, but Cena counters with a big clothesline.
He nails him with this lariat. There are things that happen in this match from Cena that I wasn't expecting. And he looks good here, better than I thought he did in 2007. But my God, and again, we'll get to it as the match goes on. Shawn Michaels, he is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here, making John Cena look like a world beater.
A back elbow by Michaels, and he starts working over Cena for the first time. Chops in the corner. Michaels charges in the corner, and Cena with his foot up stuns Michaels, and he gets clotheslined by Cena again, and Cena right back to that headlock.
Yeah. Also around this time, Jerry Lawler, I actually thought was very good on this show for the most part by his standards on Raw, particularly by 2007. He makes a point about how fascinating it is the reactions that Cena gets. He calls him John, which at that point I'm thinking Vince has got to be yelling in his ear because he hates when they just call a wrestler by their first name. And then he says, the reactions to Cena are so varied based on the city that he's wrestling in and who he's wrestling. And I just thought, it was cool to hear him say wrestling, but that was a really interesting point from Jerry Lawler. And those are usually, I hate to say it, but few and far between.
Yeah, this doesn't last long as Cena with shoulder blocks, but Michaels tries a sweet chin music super kick. Cena avoids it, grabs Michaels for the FU, the future attitude adjustment.
Which is basically a very, very, very poor man's very safe Death Valley driver.
Yes, but Michaels escapes as well, and he goes to the floor to regroup as he's full of frustration at this moment.
Yes. Again, Shawn Michaels is in full Ric Flair mode here.
Yep. How many similarities to what I just described takes you right back to that Flair Steamboat match that we covered. Like that layout and that sequence.
It's the same. 100%.
Is almost exactly the same. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's Flair Steamboat that the 2 out of 3 falls match, and in some ways it felt even more like Flair Steamboat from that Boogie Jam 1984 show.
After commercial, Michaels is beating up Cena in the corner. Michaels stomps on the face of Cena, and they end up trading shots in the corner. Michaels sends him off the ropes, but Cena catches Michaels, turns him into a fall-away slam position, but then just slams him straight down for a near fall. All power moves here by John Cena.
Yes, yeah, just a falling power slam, a berserker slam, if you will. Nothing pretty, but like just effective, and it looked good. They work so much better together than you would think if you hadn't ever seen them wrestle each other.
Yeah, Michaels hard into the buckle, then a fisherman suplex by Cena, only a 2 count. Cena hits a blockbuster on Michaels for another 2 count.
Yeah, this was crazy. Yeah, again, talk about moves I had forgotten or didn't really realize that John Cena used. So he kicks Michaels in the stomach, so he's doubled over. He bounces off the ropes to the back of Shawn Michaels, and then jumps and somersaults over Shawn Michaels and grabs his head and rides the head down to the mat. Yeah, it was like a blockbuster, like a flipping hair bulldog. Interesting stuff.
Michaels chopping, Cena punching as they trade more shots.
Again, very Flair Steamboat, with Michaels throwing the chops, Cena throwing the punches rather than those overhand sort of chopping punches that Steamboat would throw.
Cena muscles Michaels up for a backdrop.
Yeah, this was awkward, but I was totally fine with it because it looked like a struggle.
Yeah, this was that we talk about. We love it when moves are clunky as long as they look like a struggle. That's
yes.
That adds to the atmosphere here.
Well, it's very non-WWE. Like, that was one of the things as a kid that always appealed to me more about the NWA and WCW, was that things didn't always look as clean. Things looked a bit more like a fight. And again, this match in so many ways did not feel like your WWE main event style at all.
Michaels hits an awesome snap swinging neck breaker.
Yes, like Bobby Eaton style.
Yeah, they trade shots again. Flying forearm by Michaels. He does his kip up, slams Cena, and he wants to go to the top, but Michaels collapses due to his lower back.
Yeah, he collapses as he's going towards the ropes, and then as he goes out to the apron and goes to get to the top rope, he collapses again before he can get to the first rope. Just as we talked about, a masterclass, a tour de force of pro wrestling here from Shawn Michaels. And we're still in the relatively early stages of this match, and I can't recall a better Shawn Michaels performance in terms of just ticking all the boxes. You can talk about the we'll get to it later. I'll wait for later for that.
He crawls to make his way to the top rope and nails a perfectly beautiful flying elbow off the top. Michael starts tuning up the band. He's stomping his foot in the corner. He saw that Cena was going to block it, so Michaels instead grabs him and goes for a backslide instead. Gets a 2 count.
This was awesome. A super, super cool creative thing where it almost looked to me like Michaels, like the idea was that he was using the super kick as an intentional fake to go to get the backslide. Like if you're talking about like kayfabe wrestling strategy, I loved that.
Yeah, Cena tries a flying body attack, your favorite, but Michaels moves out of the way. Cena crashes and burns, then rolls out to the floor. Michaels tries a plancha over the top to the floor, but Cena catches Shawn Michaels in midair. He then herks him onto his shoulder and runs. He's running with him, about to post him, but Michaels slides behind and shoves Cena into the steel stairs at ringside.
Yeah,
all power display by John Cena here.
Super impressive, just physical strength from Cena, like you said, that pescado. And then just, again, Shawn Michaels wasn't a massive man at this point, but just the force of him landing, like it, most guys would not be able to catch him or drop him, and Cena just caught him. He had it totally fine.
And then herked him up to his shoulder. So
yes, deep into this match too. Just a freak of nature, John Cena.
Both men are down on the outside as we go to the commercial break. Back in the ring, Michaels is working over the shoulder of Cena. Cena, he's thrown shoulder first into the ring post. He rolls back out to the floor. Michaels pulls Cena right back in, continuing to work over the left arm and shoulder. Hammerlock on Cena. And Cena tries to pull Michaels' hair to break it up. A little bit of desperation from John Cena in this hold. Reaching really for the hair.
The first time we've seen that at all in this match, that John Cena, even the momentary lapses in control, he got control right back, and he was never, as you said, sort of panicked or in danger. Now we're seeing him in that state.
Yeah, especially for how confident it's a role reversal now at this point of the match from where we were at the beginning of the match.
Exactly.
Michaels keeps rolling him up in that position for a couple of 2 counts. Cena uses his one good arm to slam his way free, but can't follow up. He misses an elbow drop. Cena with some clotheslines, shoulder blocks. He's starting to heat up. He has his one-arm comeback here.
Yeah, his version of the Blue Thunder bomb. He's on fire in his again, very charismatic, fiery, but like athletically clunky way that just is John Cena, where he hits this comeback, and every move he's hitting, you expect it to just go spectacularly wrong, but it doesn't. He's figured out a way to make this work for him. And yeah, he's on fire here.
He hits his 5-knuckle shuffle fist drop, and Michaels is hurting. Cena, he tries the FU, but Michaels tries sweet chin music. He misses.
Yeah, he slips. Yeah, Michaels slips out of the FU attempt, goes for the super kick. Cena ducks, picks him up, hits the FU. Michaels kicks out, and Jim Ross is losing his mind, which he rightfully should be. And then we go to a commercial break? What? The high point, zenith of this match, we just have a super close near fall of a guy hitting his finisher. They kick out. In theory, the finish could be coming at any moment, and we go to a commercial break.
This near fall was incredible. I yelled at the TV when it went to commercial. I'm like, what's going on?
And Michaels countered, look for sweet chin music, and it is the FU. Cena got the FU. This will be it. Cena, what? How in the name of, how did Shawn Michaels kick out of the FU? I don't know how he did it, but he did it. My God, they're still going.
After commercial, Michaels is thrown outside under the bottom rope. He's not thrown over the top or anything. He's thrown under the bottom to the outside.
The only other person I've ever seen take this bump is Rey Mysterio.
Yes.
When some giant hulking behemoth of a man will just grab Mysterio and slide him out under the ropes like he's a bowling ball. That's what Shawn Michaels did here. And we should note, and I don't know how much of this was just Shawn Michaels pre-match selling, but when he comes out for this match, his entrance and he gets in the ring, physically and the way he's moving and the look on his face, he looks like a 1,000-year-old man.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
And the fact that if that was not just incredible pre-match selling, the fact that he is doing what he's doing in this match and doing it at the level that he is just mind-blowing.
Cena on the outside rams Michaels back first into the ring post.
Oof.
Throws him back into the ring.
From a bear hug position, Gorilla Monsoon.
Cena tries a suplex, but Michaels keeps blocking, but Cena starts hitting clubbing forearms to the lower back of Michaels and finally gets that suplex and then gets another near fall.
Yeah, this, again, you talk about things that are not WWE style. This struggle for this suplex, this vertical suplex, was straight out of 90s All Japan.
Yes.
Like, this felt more like something out of a Misawa Kawada match than a John Cena Shawn Michaels match. Very cool. And then this long 2 count and the kick out, Jim Ross goes crazy as though he fully expected a vertical suplex to end this epic match.
Cena with a bear hug that would make Gorilla Monsoon roll over in his grave.
Oh, yeah. This was the loosest bear hug you have ever seen. Not good.
No, listen to our Royal Albert Hall show from season 1 to hear about Gorilla Monsoon's passion for bear hugs.
Yes, and the proper application and execution thereof.
Michaels fights free, but Michaels gets thrown into the buckle so hard that he goes up and over the top to the floor. This was absolutely brutal.
It was, and again, a great analysis note from Jerry Lawler.
Yeah, I had that
where
here.
He talks about how this is 3 separate impacts for Shawn Michaels because he hits the turnbuckle. He goes up and over the turnbuckle and lands back first up against the apron. And then that force propels him head first into the mats on the floor.
And good production as they're right there with the replay as Lawler is walking us through the impact points. So, this was extremely well done. Back inside, Cena to the top rope hits a leg drop as Michaels was bent over trying to get up. This was probably the most spectacular move from Cena for the match, and gets a long 2 count here.
This is one of those big match Cena things where he busts out crazy stuff he doesn't ever otherwise do, at least from the top rope here. This is a Sicilian slice. Little Guido would be proud of this. An honorary member of the FBI, sadly not welcomed by Tracy Smothers in the locker room here to the FBI, but a Sicilian slice, only 2. Jim Ross, again, just fantastic here, screaming, "Good Lord, how close was that?"
Cena puts Michaels onto the top turnbuckle. He teases an FU from the top, but Michaels slips behind him and powerbombs Cena. Both men are down.
Shawn Michaels doing a powerbomb. When have you ever seen that? Again, just showing the how deep we are into this match, the desperation, and we have to just note, and we can't say it every single time because it's literally every moment of this match, particularly as it gets deep, but how just all-time Mount Rushmore great Shawn Michaels selling in this match is not only when he's getting hit with moves, but the exhaustion between moves. You've never seen anything like this. Just top tier stuff from Michaels.
Cena with a drop toe hold. He goes for the STFU, but Michaels kicks him off. Cena on the apron. Michaels is able to knock him off the apron, and Cena bounces off the edge of the announce table, chest first.
This was perfect, by the way, because it was both visually spectacular and the safest thing you've ever seen in 100%. Your life.
Yeah. Michaels outside grabs Cena. He tries to pile drive Cena on the stairs like he did at WrestleMania. So it wasn't just he's going to try to pile drive on the stairs. A backdrop is coming. He had done this pile driver on the stairs at Mania, busting Cena wide open. Here, Cena does backdrop his way free. Michaels hits the floor. We go to commercial again. After the commercial, they brawl on top of the announce table.
It's
total chaos
at
the announce desk.
We come back from commercial, and there's a pile of bodies, and it is Shawn Michaels, John Cena, Jim Ross, and Jerry Lawler, and a bunch of cords and cables, and they are all tangled together. Everyone is screaming. People are being choked. Cena and the ref are yelling. I feel like a lot of times the WWE does not do a good job at chaotic moments. Just the overly produced element of it. Things just don't feel chaotic. This absolutely did.
It did. And they end up back in the ring where Cena finally gets the STFU on in the middle of the ring. They've been building to this moment for almost an hour.
And Jim Ross is screaming that Shawn Michaels is, quote, fighting with every gut in his body, unquote, which I loved. It makes no sense, but it makes perfect sense at the same time.
He's crawling, but he can't get to the ropes. Michaels tries turning to his side to help with the pressure. Michaels is close to the rope, but he's fading. He fights one more time and gets the ropes for the break. Michaels then tries Sweet Chin Music. Cena tries the FU, but Michaels slides out and finally hits the big super kick. He crawls over to cover Cena, gets his arm across him, but only a 2 count because Cena grabbed the rope with his hand. Awesome near fall.
Yes, just spectacular. And this is where Jim Ross, with the understatement of the century, says, this may be one of the best matches in the history of Monday Night Raw. You don't say, Jim.
Both men are exhausted, and they're trading shots. And Michaels gets sent into the buckles. He goes upside down. As he comes down, Cena puts him on his shoulders for the FU, Michaels slips behind him, hits Sweet Chin Music, gets the arm across Cena, and this time it's a 3 count. Shawn Michaels wins.
Circle. Who will prevail?
And what will they have left this Sunday at Backlash?
And Michaels turned inside out, upside down. And Cena.
Oh, no!
Looking for the second FU tonight.
Look at that!
And Michaels. Oh, yes! Michaels hit. Sweet Chin. Cover.
Oh, no!
Michaels wins.
Oh, my gosh!
Wins. My God, Michaels wins.
The Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels.
It took an encore of Sweet Chin Music, but the second one did the trick, JR.
And if this happens this Sunday at Backlash, Shawn Michaels will once again live his dream of becoming the WWE Champion.
Absolutely incredible professional wrestling. That finishing sequence was so good. It was so perfectly executed. Michaels hitting that short super kick, and then in the motion of the super kick, as he hits Cena, Cena is falling like a tree in the forest down to the mat. And as he's falling, Michaels is falling and sort of lands in like a really slow motion, almost cross body press type of position onto Cena and gets the pin. Just a perfect finish, a damn near perfect match. I did want to note Shawn Michaels, the comparison that I wanted to make that may seem weird and you probably haven't heard said too many times before, but as we're into those closing moments in particular, and they're both Shawn Michaels and John Cena in the corner, and Michaels is trying to pull himself up, and it's like his back is missing vertebrae because he's just an amoeba, like he just barely can even get up. He is full Terry Funk here. Just I cannot say enough superlatives about Shawn Michaels in this match. John Cena more than held his own.
Absolutely.
The only Monday Night Raw match that I think that I've seen that can even come close to comparing this, even though it was much shorter, the only match I would have at the same level, and I would have to go back and watch it and see if I would have it at a higher level, was Bret Hart versus the 1-2-3 Kid for the WWF title from, I believe it was 1994.
Yeah.
Just a perfect pro wrestling match that I think went like 21, 22 minutes. But this match, particularly when you look at it in the context of WWF television during this time period and the WWF main event style, which could produce very good matches, great matches. And John Cena and Shawn Michaels had great matches that were 100% entrenched in that WWE main event trope heavy style. The fact that this match, I don't feel like relied on anywhere near as much of that. The first half felt, again, a lot like a Flair Steamboat match, and the second half felt more like some elements of a Michaels or Cena main event. But good Lord, what a professional wrestling battle.
An incredible TV match. And this match went 1 hour with commercials, and it was great. I bet seeing the action between the commercials would have made this match even better. And what really made this great at the time was that nobody knew that this match was going an hour.
Yeah.
So people were just along for the ride, and you're 40 minutes in, and it could be ending at any minute, and it goes an hour. People are losing their minds for these near falls towards the end because you didn't expect it to go this long, and it did.
Well, you had
and
Orton and Edge.
incredible.
You had Orton and Edge advertised to come up next. And so the way wrestling shows are formatted, you're thinking, okay, well, this has got to end in like 20 or 30 minutes at longest to be able to get to the Orton and Edge match. So yeah. And then the other thing that I can't remember whether we talked about this right before we started recording or whether you mentioned this earlier on in the show is just that the expectation when you're watching a main event or a main event style match on Raw is that at a certain point, right when it feels like it's going to be kicking into like an all-time classic and there's going to be a legit finish, somebody's going to run in. And you could even see at several points after big near falls, there were people ringside in the first couple of rows on the side opposite the hard camera. You can see them looking towards the entranceway thinking, okay, at some point we've got to get interference from Orton or Edge here. And it never came. They just had an incredible professional wrestling match here for one half of the Monday Night Raw television program that night.
It was about a quarter of the way through watching this for the podcast where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is that match. Like, I didn't think that this was that match going into it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I remember this match and hearing about this match and all of this was, I'm like, oh, we are so lucky that we got this match on the randomizer. And so, yeah, I
for a Raw
so
2007, think about what else we could have gotten. We've talked about before about just barely missing things by like a week or two. Like we'll watch a show and then we'll look at what was on an episode for the week before or the week after. Like, oh God, how do we miss that? Like the Mid-South one that we missed the Flair DiBiase match by like a week or two at most. But here we got exactly like we could not have found the needle in the haystack more acutely than we did here, than the randomizer did for this show.
I looked up Brian Alvarez Figure 4 weekly newsletter to see what he said about this match. And his review was that Shawn Michaels, at 40 years old, with a surgically repaired back that he was never supposed to wrestle on, decided he was going to go out there with John Cena. John Cena, mind you, not Edge or Hunter or Angle or anyone renowned as a great worker. And he was going to go 60 minutes with this man in a babyface match with no gimmicks, no crazy dives off posts of the floor, no blood, nothing. Just straight professional wrestling. And he did, and it was perhaps the best match in the history of Monday Night Raw.
Oh, yeah. It's a great description of it. I would go so far as to say this is the best match in Shawn Michaels' career. It's one of the best. And again, John Cena held his own here, but it's one of the best like one-man shows or singular performances in a match I've ever seen. I can't recall ever seeing maybe 3 or 4 that I could think of WWE matches that were at this level. The other thing is you were going through what Brian said about Shawn Michaels here is that his performance in this match, it brought memories to me of in recent years of a physically broken down, but still somehow producing incredible matches, Hiroshi Tanahashi. There's so many parallels stylistically between the two guys. And then as their careers have gone on and as their bodies betrayed them and the injuries piled up, their ability to adapt and still have as good, if not better matches than they had during their much more athletic years is it's a sight to behold.
This show did a 3.7 rating.
Should have done a 12.7 rating.
The Cena-Michaels match drew a 3.9 rating. So the first hour did a 3.4, which absolutely decimated the rating, but a 3.9 over the course of the hour for Cena and Michaels. This was a huge rating success,
which is rare because usually long matches on TV shows, particularly for WWE, that's not where the ratings come in. That's not what draws the people.
Right, but because this was building without people knowing it was going so long.
There had to be a lot of people calling their friends. Like, hey, like this is actually worth watching. Check this out.
So great show. One of the best episodes of Raw. So glad we got it on the randomizer. And this was something. Shawn Michaels is a national treasure. Just an awesome show.
Particularly the second half of his career. Like I'll flat out admit, just because of all the antics he pulled and being a diehard forever Bret Hart fan, that the first half, the pre-back injury of his career, part of his career, not a huge fan of, while acknowledging that he was great in the ring. Like I actually think, again, stripping all that away, he became so much better of a wrestler when the things that he relied on to be spectacular were taken away from him. I just think like there's no match that he had pre-back injury that even comes close to this match and the performance that he had here. Not even close.
Well, when we talk about the worst thing on the show, it had to be Trevor Murdoch's finish to that match. Now,
yes.
So if you want to weigh in on what the heck that was, you're going to do that via our social media. You can find us on Twitter at WrestleAtRandom. You can also find us the same place on Instagram at WrestleAtRandom, Facebook.com/WrestlingAtRandom as well. If you don't go on social media and you want to interact with the show, we want to hear from you anyway. So send us an email at wrestlingatrandom@gmail.com. We can get your feedback there. We love to hear about when you're listening to the shows. Tell us about the episode you're on, because you can listen to these in any order. They're like we mentioned, you might just now had gone back to the season 1 Royal Albert Hall show to hear about Gorilla Monsoon and these bear hugs, and you want to tell us about it. Make sure that you do that, and we love to hear about it. We reply to every single message, so make sure that you hit us up there. And if you haven't got enough content in the free feed and you're enjoying the show we're doing and you want to support the show, the best way to support the show is through our Patreon, patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom. That is where you can sign up for bonus audio every single week.
Yes, and absolutely. Make sure you do that. Support the show. There are so many episodes of the podcast on the bonus feed that obviously if you've never subscribed there before, you've never heard them. They're not available on the free feed, and it runs the gamut from great matches, terrible matches, weird matches, full shows, one-match shows, and everything in between. It is a treasure trove of both shows that we reviewed and definitely some interesting reactions from us to some of the stuff that we've seen. We let our hair down a little bit on that version of the podcast, and it's good times, and you help keep this free feed going if you support it. We appreciate it.
That's right. And so if you can sign up for $5 right now, and you get hours of additional content that you've never heard. Over
25 episodes if you're listening in linear fashion right now. If you're listening as this podcast came out, if you go to patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom, or you go to the bonus subscription on Apple Podcasts, there are 25 episodes of this show that you have never heard waiting for you, and you get them all just from that 1 month of subscription. You get the whole back catalog.
That's right. We've got other fun stuff on there as well. You can also be the randomizer. You can bump up to the $10 tier. You can choose a show for us to watch. A lot of the content in the bonus feed is commissioned podcasts. People were executive producers of this show. They were the randomizer that week, and they picked a show for us to watch. You can even bump up one extra tier for $15 that month. You can get yourself a t-shirt. We will send you a t-shirt. You get all the audio as well, all of the information and the details of how to sign up. Patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom. If you can't support the show financially, we understand as well. You can do your part by telling your wrestling fan friends about the show. Show them how to subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends that used to be wrestling fans about the show. They might enjoy taking a trip down memory lane with us as well.
And make sure to tell your former friends who you know are wrestling fans about the show. I guess John Cena and Shawn Michaels used to be tag partners. That implies that they were friends. Maybe you can listen to this podcast with your former friend and then go out and have a backyard wrestling match that's one of the greatest backyard wrestling matches of all time, like John Cena and Shawn Michaels did on the pro level.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up this week. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy. This was fun. I just completely enjoyed an episode of Monday Night Raw. I don't know what the hell's going on with me.
There's no way you couldn't have enjoyed it. And from Vince McMahon's hats to Shawn Michaels, this was top to bottom a fantastic show. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.